Arizona. After devastating storms like Harvey or Irma, the focus naturally turns to rebuilding, and for some people, that focus has a strong racial angle. In a recent article in The Root magazine, Charles Ellison suggested that post-Harvey recovery efforts in Houston should, quote, prioritize black and brown folks dealing with the compounded devastation from generations of dire economic straits. Ellison also laments that officials are too focused on bailing out property owners instead of offering assistance to Houston's poorest. Charles Ellison joins us tonight. Charles, thanks for coming on. So part of this I agree with, I think. I mean, I think it's always worth worrying about where the money goes and about the people most in need. And it does in a lot of, I've seen it firsthand, in a lot of cases it seems like the trial lawyers are the only ones who really benefit. And so I think that's all fair, and I'm glad that you made those points. What I was bothered by in your piece was the racial angle. The idea that aid ought to be given on the basis of race seemed like a really divisive way to think about it, and I'm wondering why you did.
Yeah, it's a very interesting characterization, very peculiar. That's definitely not the argument that I was putting forward. You know, just that we should recognize that there are issues of race and class. Class is very important here, too, particularly when you consider that in Houston, there's a very vast, not a majority, but a vast segment of the Houston population that rents, that doesn't own property. And so there's going to be questions about, well, where does that federal resource money go, particularly FEMA money, which is primarily for the recovery of property. 40% of the Harris County population rents. So we have to figure out, okay, well, what's going to happen with them? 30% of the population lives under the poverty line, and a disproportionate amount of them are black and Latino. There are also many Caucasians who are living with poverty or are renting as well in Harris County. So definitely don't want to suggest that we should just, you know, specially or uniquely single out certain demographics or favor certain demographics over others, but we should be we should realize, we should recognize that there are some very serious issues of race and class that we're going to have to tackle when we're responding to these types of disasters.
But I wonder, I mean, again, part of what you said, I think, is a fair question. I'm not sure what I think of it exactly, but I don't think it's crazy to point out that aid goes disproportionately to owners rather than renters. That's like a fair topic of discussion. Why include race at all? Storms have nothing to do with race. And in fact, one of the beauties of watching the recovery effort is it is multiracial, and you see people of different groups helping each other, and it brings out the best in a lot of ways of people. And it just seemed pointless to add the racial angle to this.
Not necessarily. I appreciate that point too. Not necessarily pointless. I think that it's very responsible, it's very pragmatic and practical to raise that point. It just so happens that when you're dealing with class, when you're dealing with homeowners versus renters, or the middle class or wealthy in a particular impact zone versus the poor, a disproportionate amount of the poor or those who are underserved or vulnerable just so happen to be black or Latino or black and brown. So it's not that we're singling out race or we're saying that race should take priority over disaster preparedness or disaster recovery or the concerns of homeowners over renters or whatever. No, race definitely shouldn't take a priority, but it should be recognized as a factor. And what happens, and you're absolutely right, Tucker, it's very beautiful to watch folks come together in times of struggle, in times of disaster, and help one another out.
Yes,
that's what we should be doing as Americans. But unfortunately, a lot of times, whether it's Harvey, whether it's Katrina, whether it's Rita or some other disaster, that can be short-lived. And then when we get into the recovery phase, and we've seen this particularly with Katrina in New Orleans, we see that many populations or many demographic groups are suddenly displaced. And so long-term, we find that a lot of that multiculturalism and that racial comedy, it suddenly erodes, unfortunately, and that's very sad and tragic.
You know what? I covered that firsthand, and I can. We don't have time to unpack it. Let's have dinner sometime. It was a little more complicated, maybe, than you're suggesting. Really quickly, where's Black Lives Matter in this? Since they care so much about Black lives, why weren't they organizing a convoy to go help? No, I'm serious. Always jumping up and down, telling us we're all racist. We're not helping black. Don't care about Black lives. There were Black lives in peril. I didn't see any kind of aid convoy led by Black Lives Matter. I wonder why not.
You know, I can't speak on behalf of Black Lives Matter. I don't represent Black Lives Matter. I can say that there are a lot of Houston is a place that is about 30% black, and I'm sure that there are a lot of community activists down there. There are a lot of dedicated, very hardworking community advocates and representatives. There are black elected officials, for example, who are very plugged into the community, who are trying their hardest. There are organizations like the Houston Area Urban League, which I personally have been working with. So I can tell you that and I know that some of those people are involved in some of those social justice movements, and they're already there on the ground in the trenches. That I can say.
I'm sure they are.
On behalf of Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, it'd just be interesting. Next time we have a BLM person, I'm going to ask him that question. I wonder if there's an answer. Charles, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Tucker. Thank you.